The first thing they tell you about the Dominion Combat Academy is that it isn't built to train fighters. It's built to reveal what you really are when survival stops being theoretical, and if you're watching this right now, don't blink, don't skip, because what you're about to hear isn't just another arena story. It's the moment an entire station realized that humans don't fight the way the galaxy expects them to. They rewrite the rules. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe to Coming the HFY, because this one changed everything. Inspector Krail Voss of the Trelix species had spent 12 cycles studying combat physiology, mapping stress reactions, cataloging predator instincts, and documenting the elegant brutality of apex warriors across 12 systems. But nothing in his meticulously ordered data prepared him for the anomaly standing alone in the center of Ring 7. Because the ring itself was alive in a way only certain species could truly feel. Its substructure layered with pressure-sensitive neuroplates that translated force into feedback, a language of motion that whispered intent through vibration, and to Krail, whose species evolved with resonance perception, the arena wasn't silent, it was screaming. Across the far side of the ring, 3 Dravak elite cadets shifted their weight, their armored feet sending heavy, deliberate pulses into the floor. Each step like a war drum announcing dominance, their exoskeletal plating already darkening from slate gray to a deep, oil-slick black as their bodies triggered defensive hardening, chemical reactions reinforcing bone and shell in anticipation of violence, and above them, the crowd leaned forward, not out of curiosity but expectation, because this wasn't a fair match, it was entertainment, a spectacle designed to confirm what everyone already believed about Death World species who wandered too far from home. Krail glanced down at the betting interface flickering in his clawed grip, a crude system patched together by bored cadets, the numbers dancing in jagged red and green lines, credits stacking heavily against the human contestant, the top wager blinking with arrogant certainty. 5 seconds to incapacitation, placed by the Dravak leader himself, a statement less about prediction and more about humiliation, because in their minds, this wasn't a fight, it was a demonstration. Then the human entered, and everything changed, though not in the way anyone expected. Her name was Leora Cain, though the Academy registry labeled her simply as H-22, and she didn't stride into the arena like a soldier or stalk like a predator. She walked, loose, relaxed, almost casual, like someone stepping into a familiar room rather than a battlefield, and Krail felt it immediately, the difference in the floor's response, because instead of the heavy, dominating pulses of the Dravak, her footsteps barely registered as pressure spikes at all, light, rhythmic, almost playful like a heartbeat instead of a war drum, and that alone made his sensory frills twitch in confusion. She stopped in the center, hands resting loosely at her sides, head tilting slightly as she looked up at the towering figures surrounding her, and then she smiled, not a snarl, not a grimace, but an easy, almost amused smile that didn't belong in a combat ring, and for reasons Krail couldn't quantify. That unsettled him more than any display of aggression ever could. The Dravak leader, Zarkul, stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed her entirely, his mandibles clicking as he released a low-frequency growl designed to trigger prey paralysis in weaker species, a sound that had ended fights before they began, and yet Leora didn't flinch, didn't stiffen, didn't even acknowledge it, instead reaching casually into the pocket of her training pants and pulling out a small, curved piece of translucent material, popping it into her mouth with practiced ease. Krail's scanner flickered as it attempted to identify the object, cycling through classifications before settling uncertainly on oral protective device. But the designation made no sense in context, because the Dravak wore full cranial armor capable of withstanding impact forces that could shatter stone, and yet the human had chosen a single strip of polymer, thin and unimpressive, and suddenly, a question formed in Krail's mind that he could not dismiss. If she wasn't protecting herself from them, what exactly was she preparing for? 5 seconds, Zarkul hissed, his voice like grinding metal. That is all you are worth. And still, she didn't respond the way the galaxy expected, because instead of bracing for impact or adopting a defensive stance, she glanced toward the control booth and raised her hand. Hey, she called out, her voice bright, almost cheerful. Can you play something with a beat? And for a moment, there was confusion, hesitation, and then, sound erupted through the arena. Not the structured harmonics of combat rhythms or the calculated frequencies used by most species, but something chaotic, aggressive, undeniably human, heavy bass and distorted guitar tearing through the air in a way that made several spectators recoil, their sensory organs overwhelmed by the raw, unfiltered noise. But Leora exhaled softly, her shoulders loosening as if the music had unlocked something inside her, and then she began to move. It wasn't combat preparation as the Academy defined it, no rigid forms, no calculated stances. Instead she stretched, fluid and dynamic, dropping low before flowing upward into a controlled spin, her body moving in sync with the erratic rhythm, each motion precise yet effortless, like she wasn't preparing for a fight but stepping into a dance she'd known her entire life. And Krail watched, his internal systems struggling to categorize what he was seeing, because there was no wasted movement, no tension, just potential energy coiled beneath relaxed muscle. The Dravak attacked without waiting for a signal because patience was beneath them, and Zarkul led the charge, his massive arm swinging forward with enough force to shatter reinforced plating, aiming not to test but to end the match instantly, and in that moment, every sensor in the arena predicted the same outcome: impact, collapse, victory. But the prediction failed, because Leora wasn't where the strike landed. She moved, not with speed alone, but with timing so precise it felt like inevitability, her body slipping out of the attack's path an instant before contact, pivoting smoothly as she redirected the second attacker's momentum with a light touch that carried just enough force to destabilize, and suddenly the fight wasn't a clash, it was a cascade, the Dravak's own power turning against them as their coordinated assault unraveled into collision, armor striking armor with a sound that echoed like cracking stone. Krail's sensory field lit up with conflicting data, the patterns wrong, the outcomes impossible. Because she wasn't overpowering them, she was guiding them, reading micro-movements, predicting intent before action, and when the remaining attacker lunged from behind, she spun, not to block, but to reposition, her strike landing with controlled precision against a joint in the armor, not enough to destroy, but enough to disable, and the giant collapsed, not broken but defeated. The music continued, relentless, and in its rhythm, her movements made sense, not chaotic but synchronized, a language the Dravak couldn't understand, and when the final attacker hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, it was over, because hesitation against a human like this wasn't caution, it was surrender. She stopped in the center of the ring, breathing steady, posture relaxed once more, and looked around at the fallen giants with that same small smile. "That it?" she asked, almost disappointed, and the silence that followed wasn't confusion anymore. It was realization. Krail stared at the data streaming across his interface, the numbers stabilizing into something far more terrifying than speculation, because the force readings from her strikes exceeded safe thresholds for her own skeletal structure, yet showed no signs of damage. Her reaction time fell outside predictive models, and the pressure distribution of her movements indicated something no one in the arena had considered: that she hadn't been fighting at full capacity, not even close. The medical analysis confirmed it moments later, cold and clinical, listing human muscular output, bone density, and neural processing speed. But the most significant note wasn't about her strength or speed. It was about the polymer strip in her mouth, reclassified not as protection from external force, but as internal mitigation, a safeguard against self-inflicted damage from jaw clenching under extreme exertion. And suddenly, the entire match reframed itself in Krail's mind, because the human hadn't come prepared to survive the Dravak. She had come prepared to survive herself. Weeks later, the arena felt different, the air carrying a tension that hadn't existed before, the betting systems dismantled, replaced by strict observation protocols, and in the Academy archive, a single item sat behind reinforced glass, the small, translucent mouthguard, labeled simply, Human Combat Stabilization Device. And Krail found himself returning to it often, his sensory frills twitching faintly as he remembered the moment the data stopped making sense and reality took its place, because the lesson wasn't about strength or speed, it was about something far more unsettling. Humans didn't need to dominate to win, they only needed to understand the moment, and once they did, the outcome was inevitable.